Anna Marie wants to know, how do we deal with coincidences, unexplained events, and other things? But you can't dismiss them, but they're not evidence. Is that? Give us a ballpark on what you're asking.
Well, when I came out to my mom as an atheist, we ended up having a relatively short conversation that consisted of her asking me why I didn't believe in a God anymore. It was very civil, but she brought up multiple points that I'd always used when I still believed.
Right.
Okay.
They were basically like my strongest reasons for belief, and like when I did, and even now, things like them still pop up in conversation from time to time. These are things like my great-grandmother during my mom's pregnancies, like predicting whether or not me, my brother, and my sibling would survive. They all came true, whether we, or survived or not.
Okay. I mean, there are a few...
She also witnessed...
I'm sorry, go on.
She witnessed a terminal family member who, just before he passed, shut up straight up in bed and seemed to witness things, And then, like, another conversation, during the conversation, she mentioned other family who had near-death experiences who all consistently seemed to see a light, quote-unquote.
Is this all tied to your grandmother? Or were you just... Okay. All right.
This is all tied to my mother and experiences she's had. Ultimately, she asked me how I explain all that. And all I could really say at the time was, I don't know.
Can you say any more now?
I don't know anymore.
Then the answer is still, I don't know.
Right, we can never, there's no way that we could rule out a coincidence.
All I could say was, I don't know. Like,
right.
I want to believe in the divine and afterlife, but... these are strange coincidences that make, like when you're going to sleep at night, the little voice in your back of your head goes like, what if?
Right.
What if's fine.
But rationally, I can't say that any of it is evidence at all.
Right. So I guess the best way to deal with it, like in a really simple way, have you heard of a false cause fallacy?
No.
Okay. Google, after this conversation, Google false cause fallacy. Now, what it is it's a logical fallacy in which a person conflates correlation with causation. So, for example, 100% of people who have died have drank water. That doesn't prove that water kills people, though, does it?
No, it doesn't.
Right. It's when somebody conflates there being correlation between two events and saying that because there is correlation, that therefore there is causation. Correlation doesn't prove causation. So the fact that somebody prayed for you to get better if you were sick and then you actually got better doesn't prove that the prayer was the reason you got better. In fact, you could actually try to pray to a different God, pray to a piece of a rock, a piece of bark on the ground, and see if you get a different... what the accuracy rate is with results.
By the way, intercessory prayer has been tested by people who were at least honest despite hoping for a result, and it works at exactly the rate of a coin toss.
Right.
Unless the people who you're praying for know they're being prayed for, and then it works less often.
Right.
And they speculated about anxiety. That not only looking up that fallacy is a good idea, but also that what if game, which is you should play it, because what if there is a God, and the best evidence that this God is able to produce is that your grandmother was able to predict whether or not a specific small set of children would live or not, and leave people wondering, hey, did that message come from God, or is that a guess, or is it coincidence, or is there some other source? If it were a God, what the hell kind of God in this what-if scenario is giving that kind of information to, like, your grandmother about this tiny set of people, and yet doesn't provide any better evidence for its existence?
Yeah, no, I never thought about that, like actually following that line of thought.
Yeah, it's one of those things where people want to look at these things and say, oh my gosh, it's such clear evidence of God. It couldn't be anything else. We can't think of anything else. And it happens all over. It happens all the time. Here's this church who needed money and prayed for it. Here's this church who got together and prayed and somebody got well. Here's this person who actually said they got a message from God and it came through. It just happens all the time. It's such clear evidence for God. Well, if that's the case, and it actually is clear evidence for God, then how could it be a problem for God just to show up here on the Atheist Experience, stand right here, and give everyone incontrovertible, clear evidence for God? Why does it have to be these little things that maybe they're coincidence? We can't really be sure. And yet people want to say, this is the clear and best evidence for God, right up there with look at the trees.
Right.
Those types of things.
He's clearly being vague and ambiguous intentionally.
That's a cagey God that, I have no, if that kind of God exists, I mean, that's closer to Loki, a mischief God, than a God that cares about us. If I care about somebody, I tell them.
Right.
In the case of my family member who seemed to see, someone they knew before they died, is it possible that someone hallucinates when they're about to die?
Yes.
Yes.
I promise you, yes.
From what we know of how the brain works, a dying brain is malfunctioning, and a brain starved of oxygen is malfunctioning. And both of those things are often the case, and they produce what we identify as hallucination.
Yeah.
The thing that you'll get back when you present this as a possible explanation is, well, maybe they were hallucinating, well, maybe they weren't, or maybe what you call a hallucination is actually a message from God. How do you tell the difference between a hallucination and an actual message from God? And the answer to that is, if I can't tell the difference between a hallucination and a message from God, God fucked up.
Yep.